Welcome, everyone. Thanks for watching and tuning in. I'm with beautiful Ange here. How are you, Ange?
I'm so good. This is exciting. I get to
I know.
christen my new podcast, Mike Nick. So thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, here to help. Here to help. No, I want to, you know what? Thank you for jumping on because you've been on my mind. You're always on my mind. We work together a lot, right? We're always in conversation. We've always got a lot of big, exciting things going on. But you've also had one of the most impactful years I think anyone has had that I know. And so I've wanted to, bring you on this podcast and really dive in because Ange, I really gosh, I got a lot of respect for you. I've got a lot of time for you. I've got a lot of listening for you. I know, let me just speak to your background a little bit and then I want to dive into our conversation. I know it's going to be really powerful for every woman listening in, but for you yourself, you are a powerful woman. Like Ange, you've been a single mum for 14 years to beautiful Jada. I know you have built multiple different businesses and work with people in business across different areas. And I know your love is really sales, soul aligned sales, spirituality, the holistic side of business. You moved to Bali and built business in Bali with clients across Indonesia, Australia, and beyond. And then you made a move in your business, which we're going to talk about in this conversation as well. But before we go into the business stuff, I think it's important to get to know the you stuff, the life stuff. And so I want to speak to and open up this conversation with it may feel heavy for some people listening in, but let's just see where this goes. And I just want to dive into your head and your heart a little bit because, as I said, you've had one of the most impactful years I think I know of anyone. And so, would you be able to share with everyone the experience that happened earlier this year?
Yeah.
And also just how you experienced that and just break that down a little bit for us and we can dive in a bit more.
Yeah, great. It's always such a beautiful experience to hear myself and my life being reflected through your reflection and what you see of me, Nix. Thanks for that. Wow, it has been a journey. And yeah, I want to pre-frame that, this could be a topic that could bring up some triggers, and obviously reach out to Nick or people that support you if this does bring anything up. I want to pre-frame that. So what Nick's reflecting on is my partner passed away back in March, and I can't believe it's been nearly 4 and a bit months already. And my partner's death was as a result of him choosing to take his own life. And there's such a humility that I talk about this subject. And I'm definitely really good in myself, which I can even still feel myself choosing words carefully. It's always interesting to feel how other people are going to take on board where I'm at in this grief journey, the experience itself. And it comes with a lot of awareness for me that the perception other people have on my experience, my grief, how I've handled things, how I continue to move through and journey my partner's suicide has been really interesting for me to reflect on humanity at large, predominantly women I speak to, and the projection of others. I was just saying to you, Nick, before we pressed record, I often get the reflection of, I don't know how you're doing this. I'd be knocked off my feet. I wouldn't be able to cope with life. I don't know how you're still raising a daughter. And this preconceived idea that when we have tragedy and big dramatic events happen in our life, that we are somewhat disempowered. And I've really utilized and celebrated this experience. I stood still and I went, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? How do I want to respond to this? And I want to, if you're going to take any notes or remember anything from this call, I feel like the power is in the pause. The power is in the pause, that whenever something happens, if as a humanity, we've got the empowerment to stop, even if it's momentarily, like take that breath. There's been a lot of breaths. And I feel like, even when we'll go finite here. When the police came to my door and made me aware that they'd found my partner, it was in the pause. You know, I could have fallen apart, and there was many parts of me that were in shock. Like, the human experience was definitely shock, devastation, out of control in my physical body. I physically shook, and the trauma. And I feel the pause gave me the power to go, wow, look at what my body's doing. It's transmuting trauma through my physicality, and I was shaking. And I decided that this was a really powerful experience to witness myself. Instead of being consumed by it, I was able to be with it. And it's no doubt, you know, I'm super grateful for mentors and coaches and, you know, the incredible humans and the books. It was interesting. I pulled out my Conversations with God again the other day, and I've got the whole series, and it's a space that I've lent on for years now, you know. And I want to take you on a bit of a journey that, you know, my empowerment around my partner's suicide and businesses and making decisions in my life to respond to life rather than react has been years in the training, years and years in the training. And I look at Nick, where I've, you know, thank goodness I've had all these years of training, and I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And I feel like if we're willing to look for where we've learned and got the calluses in life to deal with different scenarios, I don't believe there's anything we're not faced with that we haven't been practicing or in training for a really long time. You know, I reflect back on when I decided to move out of home at 17. I had all this, you know, my parents funding my horses. I was a high-level horse competitor, so my life was quite expensive. And then I decided to go against my mum's rules, and she said, well, if you don't like it here, leave. I was like, fine, I will. And I see that at 17, that started a pattern. I've done that with bosses. Like, this is outside of my values. I don't like this environment. I'm out of here. Get in the car. It's like, what have I done? You know, what have I done? And I see how I've been in training through different times in my life, figuring it out, you know, constantly flexing the muscle and figuring it out. At 17, I all of a sudden became homeless. I shacked up in a friend's bedroom and thought, how am I going to do this? I'm doing my HSC. I've got 3 horses I need to feed. I've got comps booked in. I'm 17. My mum and dad now aren't cooking for me anymore, and I've got to pay some board. And I went and got jobs. I babysat. I rode other people's horses. I sold a horse, put that money back into investing into other horses, and I flipped horses for a while. Like, it's hilarious when I think about, I didn't know consciously I was doing that. I feel like at every single crossroad of life, I was aware I had choices. And I think in that, when I think as a woman, all I needed to know was if I have choices, it's going to be okay. And then I'm in control of my life and somewhat my own destiny. You know, there's a lot that I'm not in control of. I can't control the weather, can't control the economy, can't control the government, but I can choose how I respond to everything that comes across my path. I feel like somebody said to me the other day, oh my God, surely your partner's suicide's like the worst thing ever. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel I have a choice in how I perceive this. And I've looked at it from, my brother has chosen a dark path of ice addiction and crime. And as much as I wish it was different, it's his choice. And I get to choose how I navigate that. And I could be the victim of my brother's suicide. I have parents that, you know, choose an interesting financial path and an interesting addicted path themselves. And I could be the victim. And I've deeply, I think, you know, my journey with Conversations with God, my journey with my own awareness that I'm a victim or I'm the creator. And if I'm the creator, then I have choices and decisions I can make. So I think that definitely the training, and I say the training, it's like the life experience of choosing paths. We're always at crossroads. We're sometimes on roundabouts with a couple of different ways we could go. How long do I want to loop on the roundabout? And I think, I push up against my friends in the trauma coaching industry, and I'm like, what if we just chose to let it go? What if we just chose it was a moment in time? My partner dying was a moment in time. It's not today. It's not going to be tomorrow. It was on the 15th of March. And now I get to deal with my life in the direction that I want it to go. And I definitely, life's been really big over the last 4 months, making decisions. It's a bit of plot twist, choose your own adventure. And I think that the power that I've been able to sit with, and it's a gift. I genuinely feel the principle of everything is happening for me, not to me. I then get to decide the outcome that I want to experience and don't fall into other people's perception of what it should look like. And, I'm in a Facebook group and I have so much compassion. There's 4 or 5 women joining a spouses of people who have committed suicide group a day. And that's heavy. Like, I can feel like that's heavy. And there are women in that group that are as deep in a sense of victim. He killed himself and now it's taken me out of the game. I don't know how to cope with life, is their language. I'm in a really dark place. And, my message would be is that where you want to be? Is that where you want to be? Like, why are you choosing that? Do you know you have other choices? And so I guess for me, it's been, whenever I get the opportunity to share, it's like, wow, this, when something really big hits, I feel grateful that every day now the little things matter so much more. Like my sense of, it sounds strange, my sense of taste, my smell, my observation of birds in trees, the depth of the blue in the sky. I laid at Lennox Head, beautiful part of the world, and I was looking at the gradient of blue coming down on the ocean, and I'm like, whoa, I've never really deeply acknowledged, like, how blessed am I to see all that color, little things that I've now got the opportunity to reflect on. That how amazing is life? How amazing is life?
That's so powerful, Ange. There's so much in what you shared there. That it's nearly like this experience, if there is, I don't want to use the word positive because I feel like that's a bit shit, but like the silver linings of things that, like what I'm hearing from you is that it's allowed you to not just, hear the things that maybe you've intentionally trained for and built yourself for and believe that you understood, but you've had to play it out in life. It's like become you. You've had to practice all of these things now. You can see these things, like you've had to show up. And the thing that I'm hearing, I wrote it down, was you said, I decided. That's the biggest thing I'm hearing. It's like this deliberate decision. And do you, like, sometimes it feels like, and you were saying at the start that people are asking you, how do you get up every morning? How do you deal with it? And you're thinking, in a way, your response was like, you just do. How do you think you're so weak that you couldn't? Why do you think that maybe people don't consistently, deliberately choose how they want to experience something, the action they want to take, how they want to feel? Like, that's what I'm listening to you and I'm hearing that's what you've done in the hardest of times.
And interesting, right? If you've lost a person to suicide, one of the ruminating questions is why? Why did they do that? Why did they do that? Why didn't they deal with whatever was going on for them? It's so interesting, right? Like, my greatest reflection in life is perception is projection. I believe anything that I experience outside of me is a reflection of what's going on intrinsically within me. So something I've been really sitting and playing with is, okay, great one, universe. So I get to experience a man that I love deeply, was going to marry, planning a wedding, super strange, standing doing a eulogy at his funeral, where I thought I'd be doing a speech at our wedding to the same group of people, right? Like, plot twist, super weird, crazy in my mind. And I go, where do I commit suicide? and that's heavy. And it's almost like, where do I choose to see there is no other way? And I deeply believe a person who chooses to take their life is in emotional, mental pain. I can't pretend to understand it, because it'd be like trying to understand, how I'm 6'3", I'm 5'2". It's kind of outside my realms of reality. All I can do is have a compassionate perspective on, okay, there was quite possibly, logically, some deep emotional trauma, pain, loops stuck. And I go, this is where my passion for psychology comes in. It's the unconscious incompetence. It's the I don't know what I don't know. And not having, so the answer to your question finitely is not having the capacity to reflect, self-reflect intrinsically of, but what if?
So it's that pause that you're talking about, the power of the
Pause,
pause and
100% the pause.
self-reflection.
And in the pause, and I think, it's like when those lungs deeply, like you get to that little edge and you're just like, if I suck in a little bit more, it'll like just fill me. It's almost that from a mental, physical perspective, is knowing how to ask myself the helpful questions. And the most helpful question for me is there a choice here? Is there another way? And I'm like, if you're standing on the precipice of life, whether it's physically ending this human experience through death, suicide. So the dictionary says suicide is ending one's human existence, because the soul doesn't end. We know this. I believe this. It's the human existence. So it's interesting when I reflect, Nick, my life has been suicidal constantly, because I end relationships, that human existence. I've had multiple miscarriages, that human, I'm going to be a mum. Now I'm not going to be a mum. Walking out of careers, jobs, plot twist, completely upending things, investing $50,000 in a coaching container and going, plot twist, I'm going to go in a different direction now. And I feel like two things. A woman, and I'll speak to women because that's my jam, a woman can do this when she knows she has a choice, B, the capacity to reflect on how she wants to respond.
So
And
why
I
would a
think
woman
that
think she doesn't have
I
choice?
genuinely, my whole purpose and journey is to stay in the channel of love. And I look at it as a river, because it's fun for me metaphorically. I get to stay in the river of love, or I can be on the banks of fear. So the banks are a bit inconsistent. That's where the scary things happen. The animals can eat me. But if I'm constantly on a flowing river of love, I'm moving, I'm in motion. So I look at emotion as I'm in energetic motion. And as long as I'm moving forward, and sometimes some days it's crawling on my belly, and it's screaming into pillows and it's abusing the shit out of trees in the rainforest, I'm really aware of the resources and tools that I have to constantly reflect and ask myself the question, what do I want? Is this so? Is this the truth? Is it my truth? Is it someone else's projection of their truth? Or is this the truth? I had it reflected on me last week. It's like, aren't you angry? Aren't you really pissed that he took his life? That's so selfish. Suicide's the most selfish thing. And I'm like, I don't think you're wrong. And I don't think you're right. I think it just is. And it's, in the isness of, okay, it's whatever you choose for it to mean. And if I wanted to ruminate on he's selfish, is that keeping me on the banks of fear? Is that helpful? Or can I go, I actually think it was a pretty sovereign decision. Like, man got on the horse and rode it. He made a decision. He committed to it. He did his thing. Who am I to judge? It sucks. I miss him. It's been brutal, the logic of it all. And I believe in soul journey. I believe, our stories are written. I believe the universe puts down breadcrumbs. We're just here to pick them up and have the human experience. So I play on the spectrum, and I always know there are two ends. There's the black and the white, and the gray and the gradient in the middle. And it's, can I hold the paradox of everything just is and it isn't. When the police said to me, you're a victim of this, I'm like, in your perspective. It's always just a perspective. And I feel why some women or people cannot. And for example, why did my partner not walk away and choose something different? You know, they choose help, choose a conversation, whatever the choices are. Why that one? I find interesting that we become the fear or we become the love. And I look at that as we become what we think we aren't, or we become what we think we can be. You know, it's always a possibility. And when I own, and I'm deeply passionate about owning whatever I believe is true.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's where it starts and finishes. I can believe this end or I can believe this end. And I love it comes down to baseline, glass half full, glass half empty. You choose. And
Yeah.
it's that, I think it's that question, like, do I want the glass to be full or empty? Am I grateful for the water in the glass halfway, or do I feel hard done by because it's halfway and not full? And I'm like, I think it's the capacity to check in on perspective.
Yeah, so
That's
powerful. I wrote down, Ange, because I've never thought of it that way, and probably because life hasn't forced me to think about it as well. Sometimes, like, life will create or come at you with things where it's like, hey, I'm forced to now choose or decide or think about this in a different way. And when you said, hey, it could be selfish, but I actually see it as a sovereign decision. That's wow.
mm,
Man, I was just like, I've never looked at it in that way. And, touch wood, and thank goodness I haven't had to.
mm,
But that is so powerful for anyone who's experiencing this, who is going through this, to see that, because that's just a different perspective. But he made a sovereign decision,
mm. Yeah.
not a
And, you know,
selfish.
even on the positive perspective,
Mm,
you know, it could be seen as quite a fear-based negative perspective, but I'm like, imagine if we all had, you know, so was it really weak or was it really courageous? Because I'm like, the body doesn't want to die, right? It doesn't want you to kill it. It takes a lot of strength to do that. And I'm like, whoa, I imagine if we utilize that strength in heaps of different ways. What if that was starting a business? What if you channeled that courage to start a business? What if you channeled that courage to get into a new relationship or invest your last, like I said, I've been in training. It's not new for me to invest my last $5,000 in something that I believe is backing the winner, you know, of my life. You know, I think like my life is just a bunch of horses in a race, and the horses represent choices. Which one do I want to back? And I'll often say to women, you know, like, back the runner that's running towards the same goal that you want. Because if you back the runner that's just going to sit in the paddock and take up space and not get you anywhere. So I see things from a very decompartmentalized perspective that in my human reality, I wish he was still here and backed a different horse. But at the end of the day, this is his journey. This is your journey. It's my journey. And that's the ownership piece, is my life and my joy is not reliant on you, Nick. I love you. And I don't care essentially what choices you make as my friend, my work colleague, a peer in my community, because I'm still running my race, regardless of whether you tap out, go rogue, beat me. Like, it's an interesting. And then this one's at like a whole rabbit hole, right? Is where are we getting the data for what we're supposed to do? Like, who's making the decisions? Is it my choice? Is it your choice? And that would be if I could bring him back and have the conversation. And it's obviously one that I have in the spirit realms. It's like, I just want to know, did you make that decision or was it influenced by something? Because then
yeah,
that's not as sovereign as I
it's not as
was
sovereign as
considering,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
Even in that, it comes down to, you know, I talk to women all day, every day, and they're, oh, I should stay at my job because I did a uni degree and that's what I should do. And I'm like, oof, I hope you're backing the right horse. I hope
Yeah,
it.
should is a pretty heavy loaded word, that's for sure. It's
Yeah.
like a weighted
It tells
decision.
me someone else is riding your
Yeah,
horse. You're not.
absolutely. Yeah. Ange, what have you learned about yourself in this time? What has been new for you, new learning for you?
Great question. Yum. What I've learned is I'm not your average bear, which is great. And it's interesting, right? I have, again, spectrum. On a level, and I want to own this, I have less compassion and more compassion. I have
Mm,
less compassion for people who, and I say compassion from the perspective of acceptance of their victim. I think that is enabling, and I'm not here to condone and rub your wounds for you. Like, you want to keep your cuts open, you rub salt in them. I'm not here for that. I'm here to go heal that shit. It's possible. You choose. So I have compassion, probably is not the right word, tolerance, and I'm okay with it. Like, I really own that my standards of what I accept in the human reality is higher than it was, because I feel like there's
yeah.
layers that I've been playing into of enabling. Oh, it's okay that you're broke. Like, fuck, it's not. If you don't want to be broke, don't be broke. Like, let's fire up and change that shit. So I feel like I love you. And if you're willing, I'm here to call you out and be like, if I can, you can. Like, guys, I just buried my partner and I've built a business and I'm looking for. So I think it's a deeper conviction is what I've learned about myself. And I've really hyper focused on the attributes within myself that I want to turn the dial up on. And I really just think we're all DJ boards, right? We've got different dials. And I've turned the dial up on, you will not project on me. My standards are higher, my boundaries are stronger, and my heart is more open. And that's been the conscious choice. Is my standards were lower to keep me safer and included. I'm like, that now. Like, my standards are higher and I make people meet me there now. And I'm willing to be more alone. And it's my capacity to know, the saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I'm like, okay, thanks for like getting the highlighter pen out on that one, universe. And I think that my open heart, so standards high, boundaries tight, open heart, that's the bit that's changed and I've learnt the most about myself. I'm the softest I've ever been. My heart is so tender. Like, I can feel the emotion even, bubbling up in this conversation, being seen on this level that I've decided, yeah, it hurts. I'm emotional. This is a lot. I never thought part of my story would be talking to a podcast and being heard that, I'm in pure acceptance and love and gratitude of a man I love taking his life and leaving me, leaving this earthly experience we designed together. I didn't plan that. I didn't seek that. And on a level, I've needed that. And I'm grateful for it. It's super strange. If I can be grateful for everything, then I feel like I'm on my path. Deeply feel like I'm on my path. And that's what I've learned about myself, is the deeper layers of the very simple rules, I guess, in life that we learn and we hear. And we could go down this so many ways, Nick. I know you're big on quotes and sayings, and I'm like, I wonder how many of us deeply pull it apart and go there. Like, even that whole what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. If you really pull that apart, it's so big.
Well, it's usually, the things that we hear over and over, things like those quotes, and they get shared, and they lose their magic sometimes. Like, lose that potency because everyone's seeing them all the time. Until you have that experience where, like you said, the power in the pause, and you sit and you actually break that down. And the ones that we see over and over again are the ones that are actually true. If we can sit with them and understand them from a different perspective, and then use them in our life. I was listening to a podcast this morning, Ange. It kind of summed up. Interesting when you listen to things and you get the message just as you need it, because he was sharing about the greatest suffering that you have. If you can weaponize it for good, then that's your superpower. And I was like, oh, Wow. And you just immediately came to mind because I knew we were having this conversation and I wanted to share that with you because I'm like, that's Ange's superpower, one of your superpowers right now. And that whole conversation that we've just had, any woman listening in, any man, anyone who's kind of experiencing this, I think that you have just given them a whole new perspective, and perspective is what's going to change their life because it's going to change how they think. It's going to change how they choose. And I hope that they deliberately start choosing. And also, you kind of answered the question, but I can't imagine how difficult it would be with the expectation of how other people, maybe who have also loved Dave, expect you to act and expect you to grieve and expect you to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And that outside pressure of what it's meant to look like in these hard, suffering times versus, hey, this is what I'm going to have it look like. Yeah. That's huge. And I feel like that high standards, strong boundaries, soft heart is like your armor of how you've done it. Is there anything you'd add to that?
Yes. So if you haven't seen the movie Split, it's old and it's called Split, and it's about a man who has 27 personalities and he's got diagnosed with dissociated identity disorder. Funny enough, it was the first movie my partner and I ever watched together. Who would have thought? So the reason why I bring that up is when I watched that movie, I've been fascinated. I study psychology. I'm fascinated about how the mind works and the neurology, and combine that with spirituality. I think it's fascinating. I wanted to be Clarice, from Hannibal. I wanted to be a forensic psychologist. And the reason why I share this is the word disorder in dissociated identity disorder it's a new way we describe multiple personalities now. And either way, whatever you call it, multiple personalities. I genuinely believe that society's programmed these conditions, calling them disorders, because it then integrates us into one human being with only one mindset, where for me, it's interesting when you ask, like if I get asked, how are you? And I'm like, can you be more specific? Because what I know is I'm so multifaceted. So do you mean how am I as a mum? Do you mean how am I'm always on a health journey? Do you mean how am I because it's winter, because I live on a mountain? Do you mean how am I is such a vague question, and we get so conditioned in society. But if you knew I was if when you looked at me and when we looked at each other as humanity, I saw Ange the mum, Ange the business owner, Ange the grieving partner. It's only one part of me. So if you were to say, hey, Ange, how's your grieving process? You've made it super specific to go, you know what, Nick? I'm really good. I feel like I'm in acceptance. Been experienced a lot of anger this week, yelled at some trees, abused him for leaving me because I don't know how to use the lawnmower and it's annoying. It's though if you came and said to me, which is what you and Jen do often, it's like, hey, how's business? It's not that. It's not that. It's not mum mode. It's not how's business. Oh, Jade is just challenging me, Nick. It's not that. It's, you know what? We talk clients. So I'm curious then, instead of speaking so vague, I find there's there's such a grossness in the vague that society's conditioned us that we're just one blob. I feel like we're not jelly.
It's similar, Ange, to what you're saying at the start of this conversation of that's a default question that society asks. We just default to how we're programmed, what we hear, and we default the response too. Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Well, society, are you okay day? I know my partner moments before he chose to take his life. If you had asked him that, he would have said he was okay because that's programmed.
Yeah.
But my response to that is curiosity, and I think that's another key, right? Pause, self-reflection, knowing the questions and the curiosity. If you said to me, are you okay? I'd be like, can you be more specific? The movie Split is a really good example of the therapist has conversations with one of his identities is an older woman, Patricia. and she speaks to her. One of them is a 7-year-old little boy. And so in life, Nick, I love this. I want to talk on stages about this. In sales, when I work for you and your business in Women to Wealth, I can tell you now, the grieving widow isn't taking the call. It's the woman passionate about the possibility. It's that identity. It's that hat that I put on. When I go out and have dinner with my daughter, I don't take my CEO. I take mum. Sometimes friend, mostly mum. That's an interesting hat within itself. Do I want to wear mum hat or friend hat to a 15-year-old? Are we jamming to some R&B, or am I putting some boundaries in place? And I'm like, I really do believe when we can utilize, if the mind can come up, the world can come up with mental health disorders, and we took our power back, I go, let's challenge schizophrenia, guys. Is it an intuitive voice? Let's challenge multiple personalities. Is it the multifaceted parts of ourselves that if we utilize them, I reckon that's really helpful? Because in sales, I don't want my 7-year-old that felt abandoned to be showing up on a call. No thanks, you don't get the stick for this round. But maybe I want to give her the stick when I'm babysitting my neighbor's 3-year-old and we're at the park on the swings. 7-year-old can go a hardest. Stick's yours.
That's so far out, incredibly helpful, Ange. Like that, I feel like I just zoomed out listening to you and picking all of those different personalities and different roles that we have, rather than trying to be it all at once. We are different things at different times, to different people, to different situations and circumstances. And it's just like, oh man, I love the way that you just explained that, because there's power in each of them.
Right.
Isn't
And I
it?
think, imagine even the more it's something I'm super, and go find me on socials, and only a year and a half ago, I looked like a Viking. I used to draw Othello in my room. I had long blonde dreadlocks. I used to wear, I've got the tattoo on my chest. I used to wear hard out Viking gear. And why? I believe those of us brave enough to self-express, really do embody the multifaceted personalities within us. Instead of integrating everything, integrating the trauma, what if the trauma taught you something? Because I don't know if people say to me, oh, you'll get over it. I'm like, I don't want to get over it. I want it to amplify who I get to be. This is part of my journey. Why would I want to wipe it? That'd be like self-induced dementia. Weird. Why would I want to do that? It's like, instead of trying to fight against what we believe is painful, what if we recognized it? What if the cancer, what if the bankruptcy, what if the heartbreak was just a moment in time to put a highlighter pen over what it can then transmute into? And if you were to decompartmentalize and be like, who did I wake up as today? Me, I always decide I wake up as the person conscious about my health, get out in some nature. What would that version of me need right now? But I can tell you, when I'm sitting on a boat having wines with you, she probably doesn't have the stick, And I think that when we give ourselves as women permission to be all of us, instead of this beige painted picture, gross, I love that then the permission piece is, man, my journey was, I had a partner that chose to end his own human existence. Wow, I learned a lot from that. But it's not who I am. It's what I experience. And I'm like, woof, if I could leave a stamp on every woman, you are not your experience. It's a part of your story and your journey. How do you want to utilize that?
So powerful, Ange. Seriously, so it's just there's a lot coming up, and I know we're going to transition into some more talk in regards to you. And actually, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's do it, because I think it is going to be helpful. There's this part of your life that we've been talking about where it came at you.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of came at you, and it could in every way, in any way, break you. Could break a lot of people. And everything that you've shared so far has been how you've deliberately made decisions, how you have had the power in the pause, how you've been able to self-reflect, how the magic is in knowing how to ask better questions. So you get the best answers that you can get, not the default ones. And there's times where life will come at us and try and break us. And then there's things where we have to deliberately break them in our life because they aren't who we are. They aren't that horse that we want to ride right now to cross the finish line. And I know that you've done this probably multiple times if you think about it. I'm sure you've probably got more than one experience where you've gone, no, I'm going to burn that thing down. And I know that you've done this in the life of business. I know that you consciously decided to burn down your business to the ground after investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, thousands of hours, and then making that decision. And again, it comes back to this deliberate decision that you have.
Yeah. And the identity of it. I was the coach. I was Ange Wild, I was changing lives, and even the financial, like solid 40K months, didn't have to think about it. And I was only talking about this the other day to a girlfriend. She's like, you did what? And I'm like, just wrapped it up, And why? When I go back to the multiple personalities, Ange the coach was done in that reiteration.
How did you know?
How did I know? I'll use a metaphor. My little car that I bought brand new, it was 6 years old, and every time I took it to the mechanic, he was like, mate, you need a new this, you need a new that. And I'm like, this is supposed to be a $500 service, dude. How come it's $15 now? And, something like, then something's flashing on the dash. And I'm like, okay, Ange, in life, in my coaching world, the light was on the dash. Shit started to show up where it was like pushing up against my desire to be in flow. And I think we all get that light on the dash in life, or the fuel gauge, right? Like, fuel's low. How low do you want it to get before you run out and you're on a highway in the middle of nowhere, your mobile phone's flat? And I'm like, I'm not willing for that. I'm not willing to accept the consequence of my ignorance. So again, unconscious incompetence. It's a really interesting place to pretend to play. But if you know you're there, you're already messing it up. So it's conscious incompetence that I'm very aware I have a decision and choice around. And when life starts to give me little warning bells, it's like, I could see it from two perspectives. Do I want to challenge this, lean in? Because I could have learned to become a mechanic. That was a choice. Yep, I could pull this car apart, YouTube the shit out of it, spend my days rebuilding this motor, or I could keep paying for it, have an unreliable car. For me, I was like, nah, thanks, life. Time to get a new one. So how did I know? I'm hyper aware of the lights, the fuel gauge in my life, and the fuel gauge in my coaching business, it was empty. The red lights were on, and I was aware of choice. I could have replaced some of my team. I had a lot of my team leave, and instead of replacing them again and rebuilding again, I sat with my intuitive spirit. I meditate a lot, and I asked the question, is this in service? And if I drop this, I'm broke at the moment, not broken financially, gone. What's next? And all I got was trust. It gets to be bigger. And I feel like my capacity of like finding a way where you kind of look like there's no way, like that's the perception. And I'm like, the Disney movies or whatever where the person steps through the mirror, there will be the person that goes, nah, it's a mirror, can't step through it. And I'm like, yeah, watch me. Boom. And I could definitely belt my head. However, most times where I've walked through the mirror, there's been something really cool on the other side. And I stood up at a conference and spoke on stage recently, and a similar question. It's like, how do you trust the unknown? And I'm like, the more you do it, the more you do it. You just got to get, like, I've gotten on horses and they could have killed me, could have been the best ride of my life. I've dated guys, could have killed me, could have been the best date of my life. Business opportunities. I'm like, I think for me, I have so many resources. I have women like you. I have women like Jen. I know that I know that I know it won't fucking take me out, because you guys, my resources, like, even if it's just this, worst case scenario, I come back and I go, there's a lot. Do I ring you guys? Do I like reach for my resources and continue to lean in? And I think that when you know you've got the safety net in life, then you look for the warning signs and lean in and make decisions. I'm big on making decisions now before it decides, the universe decides for me. And I'm a big believer in, you get tickled by a feather, little things happen, and it's the perception of, can you see the little things? Most of us see them and choose to ignore them. Like, your bank account's nearly at zero, you can tell your kids need braces, your relationship's not great, but instead of going, see ya, I'm out of here, my standards are high, my boundaries are tight, I love you, but you're not the guy for me, do you stay? And then next minute he's cheating on you. And I'm like, you kind of made that happen because you didn't look at the fuel gauge, or you ignored the fuel gauge. So I think you get tickled by a feather, Nick. You kind of, the fuel gauge goes, hey, you get low, you're on your last quarter. Do you fill up there and consciously make a decision for yourself? Or do you let it get pretty empty and your nervous system gets rocked and you're like, I'm starting to now manifest all the bad things, because the more you get hit by a truck or a freight train and I'm like, yeah, you do get taken out. 100%. There's people that die of cancer. Where did it start though? What didn't you see for yourself? Like, I got cervical cancer. It was a massive turning point in my life. I got cancerous cells on my cervix and I went, this relationship, this lifestyle, we're done here. And I choose to see things quicker now.
100%. 100%. Why do you think there's so many people wait for the freight train?
Courage.
Why does it take us to do that as humans? We're like, nah, I'm going to wait to be fucking slammed and then I'll change.
Lack of courage is the most obvious one. Like, it takes courage. And, your book says, people sit on the nail and, next minute, I don't know, there's a lot of nails. And the nail gets bigger and festier and gets infected, and next minute you're dying of tetanus or something, and it's like, could have just got off the little nail, guys. And I'm like, this is where my tolerance, like, I don't know if I want to say lack of compassion, now I feel into it. It's more, you chose that. And
I don't think it's lack of compassion though, Ange. I think that you see, because you've maybe experienced the courage and the depth of ability in yourself, you know that that's in other humans now.
Yeah.
It's not like you got it and I didn't, or someone else didn't. It's just like, nah, I know your fucking capacity. I know that you've got more courage in you. I know you've got more fight in you because you've got it. So I don't think it's lack of compassion. I think that you see more in people.
There's a book I read years ago, Carolyn Elliott's great, Existential Kink, and people often think it's like kinky as in sexuality, BDSM. Yes, and it's more, some of us love, I'm going to reframe that before this goes weird into a whole different realm. There are people there are people that like really dark spaces and pain from physical, infliction of pain. Not necessarily my jam, but it can appreciate that it takes people to those heightened spaces. Carolyn Elliott represents that in the book Existential Kink, as in life, some of us love getting flogged with pain. Why? Not because it's like rainbows and lollipops, is because it takes us into the space of familiarity and we think we can beat it. So when I keep dating, and I hear this and I have a bit of an eye roll at it, when I keep dating narcissistic men, great. What are you loving about that treatment? Because you keep choosing it. So the victim, like, and I polarize the victim and the creator. Your question was, why do you think? I'm like, well, two things. People are fucking lazy. They keep choosing what they know, and it's a easier pain to digest than the courage of doing something unfamiliar with a discomfort. It's choose your pain. It comes back to that simple principle. And I often go, do I want to, I look at Steve Irwin, it's like, man, guy could have died a million times, been eaten by crocs. That would have made sense in my head. Goes and gets killed by a stingray. Bizarre. I believe either way he was going to get killed by something, like law of averages, right? You put yourself out around dangerous things enough, you're kind of going to, you're up there. Same as sales, right? You'll make sales if you do it enough, guys. You're going to get eaten by a crocodile eventually. And I'm like, interesting though. I look at the psychology, got killed by a stingray. However, how much cool stuff happened for that man's life, putting himself out there, and like, that's the adrenaline, that's the life he chose. I choose a really big life. And to answer your question, I go, I actually think some people like being super boring. I think it serves them. Safety, squishy. It's kind of like Ugg boots and tracky dacks. They're comfy, but they're not super sexy.
Yeah, I think Ange, and Grace as well, Grace Ambrook, who we love.
Yeah,
So what you said there is so powerful, because and she always says, she's like, you need to find the hidden investment in your decision. The
yeah,
decision that you keep on making, the circumstance that keeps on, being a reality in your life, whether it's that relationship or the way your bank account goes, or whatever it is, there's some hidden investment there for you.
yeah.
There's something that keeps you going back
When
for it.
you said
And
that,
you'll find it.
why do some people wait for the Mack truck? Is that it's an intrinsic weakness? And I say this with reverence. It's an intrinsic weakness. And I say weak as in, there's only so much weight that I could lift right now because my muscles just can't capacitate it. But I can tell you, if I committed to going to the gym every day and increase my weights, increase the reps, by the end of the month, I'd be able to lift a lot more. So I say, like, there's an intrinsic weakness that if you don't practice flexing discomfort, flexing courage, and Brene Brown's work's powerful. Like, I challenge every woman on this call today is, what is one thing you haven't said to somebody that you could go say and flex that? I'm back on dating sites. We'll go down another rabbit hole. And I thought, I haven't got anything to lose, guys. I've kind of experienced what most would perceive as the Mack truck in relating dating. And I don't want to challenge the universe in that, because I'm sure you'd have something more creative for me. And I go, on my dating profile now, it says specifically, like granularly, what I desire now in a relationship scenario. I want someone, I'm not looking for responsibility. I'm looking for something that I can deeply dive into, that has a conscious awareness around self, conscious awareness around the world, what we're doing here, who you are. And I want to share an intimate space with somebody without the responsibility of me, them, us. They do them, I do me. I don't want an us right now. And it's interesting the amount of people that are coming at me going, wow, I'm like really impressed that you know what you want. So I think when you learn the linguistics, Nick, and we do this, right, and Women to Wealth really does this, it's like, if I can teach you the linguistics of how to describe logically, intellectually what you say you want, and you know how many women we both speak to that go, I want it. And I'm like, okay, well, it's going to take this. You sure you still want it? Because if you say yes, now it's a desire, not just a want. We want to get out of the pattern of wanting and into the action of what I desire. I think that knowing the linguistics and how to deeply connect and describe what we're seeking is a big tip. And I think you need resources for that. I think not only do you read the book, but you need to embody and actualize it. And this is what I like about the work that you're doing. It's like, it's great to know it. I've read all these books, right? But I can't tell you I'm embodied and actualizing them all. I'd be a pretty cool, bigger version of myself when I do. So it's even in that knowing, integrating, actualizing, and how do I put this into action? So if I don't want a narcissistic partner, next partner, then what do I need to know, integrate, embody, and then be in myself so it repels that kind of energy? So why do people keep getting the Mack truck? Is they just don't know how to live in that principle of actualizing something intellectual and then living it. You know, I know what I will do differently in life with partners now, specifically men. I know what I will do in business now. I know I'm choosing my from the space of I can't choose an old version of interaction into a new version of actualization.
Yeah, so powerful, Ange. This has been so good. My gosh. Do you know what I was just thinking about then? Is in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be on a boat in Croatia. We'll be having this conversation, but with some wine in hand. I feel like we should record it for part 2.
Yeah.
So I feel like
You know
people
what
might
to
want to
do.
listen to the version of us on a boat with wine going deep.
Right. And this is like,
Yeah.
honestly, go watch the movie Split. It's like when the permission
Yeah.
piece is, that's going to be my bikini, wine drinking, hanging out with my millionaire mates, and it's a very different conversation to in a room of 70 women in small business where I was on Friday who are deep in fear and lack in government grants and, different conversations. So for me, the Mack truck, there's no rail for it or road for it in my world when I'm like, oh, okay, I feel the feather. I don't want that. Go in that direction. Okay. I can feel the feather. Woo.
Yeah. But I think what you've done, Ange, and this is credit to you, and you've done it intentionally, is that I know that there's so many women that I speak to that they haven't built, and they haven't because it's a choice to, and you can start this at any time. But the resources, the people, the environment, the right inputs,
Yeah.
right? What are we reading? What are we listening to? Who are we listening to? What are we actually experiencing? Like, if that doesn't change and you've consciously built yours, right? It's why I think you said before you can have more trust in the unknown,
Yeah.
in uncertainty, because it's like, hey, I built this safety net. I know who
Yeah.
I've got, what I've got, where to go.
Yeah.
And that's so important for every woman to have that, to build that safety net of resources around us.
I would deeply love to have, this conversation, again, and it's like deeper layers of, the reason why we're connected in business is I came to you and said, I've burnt my business down, 40 grand's now walking away a month. And I'm like, just put in place the principles. I've learned this. What is my linear income? How do I pay my rent? Step 1, I won't stress out about it. I look for an option. And you guys said, hey, do you want to come and do this with us? Hey, maybe you could put 500 US over here. Hey, maybe, and it's like having then the courage. I now know, great, thanks guys. What do millionaires do? Well, they do this and they do this, and you can burn it down because you've got this as an option, start again. And I'm like, now I'm at a crossroads. What do I choose? What do you choose? And it's like, I could sit and go, but now I need a government grant and maybe I could claim something from someone and who owes me what, and I'll chase this and chase that. Or I could go, yeah, cool. You know what Nick and Jen said I should do? Are they credible people to take advice from? Yep, they're doing okay in life. Okay. Do you know? And I go, if I had to sell something and find that to put over there, now I've made a decision in that direction. Yeah. And I think it's the courage to lean in and do what I haven't done before. And if I keep doing what I've always done, I'm going to get that. If I do something different and now I'm like, yo, now I'm on a yacht with all these people that have paid all this money. And I'm like, I said to Jen the other day, mark my word, my next partner will be a billionaire and you guys will be my bridesmaids, because it just is. I'm moving in that direction. My circle of influence are now multimillionaires. I'm sure my mates in that space have a bro that, you know, wants to hang out with me on a yacht in Croatia somewhere. Like, gets to be fun. Like, follow the possibilities. And I don't know if we're wrapping this up, but I'll wrap up this trajectory and say, Walt Disney, if you're brave enough to dream, be brave enough to dream. Like, why not me? Why not marry a billionaire? Like, my partner's now passed away. I get another crack at this. Why not? I want a billionaire this time.
I love that you've ended with that, Ange. I think that's a message that we need to it needs to vibrate out into the whole world because, yeah, we speak with women every day and it's really sad how little they imagine
And you
and
know what
dream
we all have in common,
in their
Nick? Like, I
life.
look at the conversations, you, me, Jen, Marty, all of them. We're batshit crazy. Crazy. We're wild enough to believe it's possible.
Yeah.
That's why I believe only 1% of humans have this life. And, right now, my bank account is not where I want it to be. It's just not. But I'm not ruminating on the what's not. I'm like, there's now so much space in my bank account for it to fill up. It's so good.
Yeah. Oh, so beautifully put, Ange. Thank you so much. Gosh, I've loved this conversation. You just have so much to give, and thank you for giving it because that's what you do. And yeah, you're so needed. I just freaking love this. I think so many women listening in will be so thankful for you. Where can women connect with you? Where can they find you?
Facebook, Ange Wild, Instagram, Ange Wild, LinkedIn, Ange Wild. I believe I have a TikTok account somewhere out there.
Ange Wild everywhere. We'll get some videos from the boat for TikTok. Not on mine. I'm not doing the TikTok videos, but we'll get them for you on your TikTok.
Yeah, it's the same. I don't subscribe to it. My daughter, it's helpful having a 15-year-old. Like, cut this up and put it on TikTok for you. Yeah, Ange Wild. I look like I look. I find that funny.
And I will say the women who obviously coming into the women to wealth space and have the courage to book their one-to-one call, you on the other end of it as well.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, amazing. Appreciate you, Ange.
Thanks,
Thanks
guys.
for the great conversation.